So before we dive in to the sermon, I just want to note that the gospel we just read was a little bit different than what we typically hear on Christmas. We typically hear the nativity story from the Gospel of Luke. Tonight, rather, we listen to the prologue, the narrative of Christ's birth through the Gospel of John. Now, we know that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. And Bethlehem is a wonderful city. It's a wonderful place that holds so much history and importance for so many across the world, even before Jesus' birth. This is a city that has been in existence for thousands of years, that existed long before Jesus and his family even walked upon that earth. It is at Bethlehem that one of the first matriarchs of the Jewish people, and through them us, was buried, Rachel. She's buried right outside the gates of Bethlehem. It is also within the fields surrounding Bethlehem that Ruth and Naomi, when they return from their exile in Moab, they come there. And it is there that Ruth gleans in the fields and meets Boaz. And through that interaction, finding restoration and hope for her and for Naomi. And though they may not have known it at the time, for the world from whom would descend from that child. It is in the town of Bethlehem that Jesse, the father of David, dwelt. And it is where David was called by the prophet Samuel to serve as king of Israel. In fact, it is where he was anointed king. Bethlehem is a place of importance, and to be connected to it forms those who are there. It is to this place, this geographic location, that the Word made a home among us and became flesh. What does that mean for us? What does it mean that the Word, God, came into the world and took on our form? And what does it mean that God gave birth to God's self in Bethlehem? Place is important. Whether we like it to or not, it forms who we are. It paints how we view the world, how we experience the world. There's no escaping it. We can escape people all we want, but we can never escape place. And that is important because Bethlehem tells us something about God. But before we get to Bethlehem, I think we first have to understand what that place of the Word means in the beginning. This prologue to John, it echoes words from the creation narratives in Genesis. We go back to the very beginning. And what John affirms for us is what we hear affirmed there in Genesis. That the Word, the living Word, who we understand as Christ, didn't just come into existence in this moment in time that we celebrate the Nativity, but the Word has been in existence from the beginning and before beginning, because the Word is God, and God is life, which means the Word is life. It's important, I think, to recognize that the Word's first home is with the Word itself. It is within the very heart and being of God, which means that when the Word took on flesh, when the Word came into this world through the Christ child, the Word brought God within that child. In this miraculous space, there is no longer separation between heaven and earth, sacred and holy and mundane and everyday. They come together. There is a unification of it in this space, an affirmation of it in Bethlehem. Now, Bethlehem, in Jesus' day and time, formed him and formed his ministry, and it forms who we understand God to be. For you see, Jesus wasn't born in a nice hospital room with an epidural, with loving family and friends gathered around. Jesus was born away from his home. Jesus was born in an unforeseen place, in a place that wasn't exactly prepared for him. Jesus was born under Roman occupation, under the military might of what that means. Jesus was born into a world where people were being pushed out of their homes by that empire. Jesus, soon after his birth, had to flee Bethlehem with his family to become refugees in Egypt so that he himself would not be killed under King Herod, who out of fear of this coming Messiah killed many, many innocent children to try and prevent it. If it makes us uncomfortable, if it makes us pause, maybe it's perhaps because we don't see much change in that place today. Jesus was born into Bethlehem, into all of these things. And knowing that the word's first place, first and foremost, is within God and God's self, it means that when God took on our flesh and was born in Bethlehem, in the seeming most darkest of places, the most challenging of moments for his family and the people of that time, it reveals that God is with us in those spaces. More than just with us, God supports us and carries us through those moments of despair and challenge. What the power of the incarnation reveals to us is that there is no separation from our cries of joy and God's. It means that when we hear cries of pain and anguish, those are God's cries too. When we sit in comfort and joy with our loved ones, that is God present. And when we find ourselves homeless and without food and without knowing where we're going, God is there too. Place forms us. And it's important that God took on flesh, took on our being, because it means that we cannot spiritualize our faith. We cannot think of our faith as just something to be thought or something to believe, as if it is something to profess. No, the incarnation teaches us, reveals to us that our faith is living and breathing, for the Word is life, and we were made in the Word's image. We were made in God's image and said we were good. Our faith isn't one of platitudes, it is of action, it is of being, it is real, it is living. In a book called This Here Flesh by Cole Arthur Wright, she reflects a bit on what place means and what it does to us. And I want to share this quote with you all. She writes, "As someone who is made of more doubt than faith, I find that Christians tend to want to talk to me about salvation." Sound familiar? They seem quite concerned about the future of my faith, but they make the mistake of showing little interest in my present conditions. If asked to choose, I want a God who is someplace, not just in the heart, but God standing on Fifth and Walthrop, God beyond the glass. I don't just want to be rescued. I want to be taken someplace safe and good. Riley's point we hear in our gospel tonight. The incarnation reveals to us that there is no separation from us and God, which means the way we are in the world, the way that we treat others in the world, the way we combat injustice, the way that we create peace and seek to create peace in the world is nothing short of God's own work through us. The incarnation means that we are never far from God, for God is within us. It is in the person next to you. It is in all life. And my friends, in the midst of deep challenge in the world, when we might feel our hearts uncertain in how to celebrate celebrate this season, this is where we celebrate. This is where we find our hope for ourselves and for the world. Because God is with us and among us, it means the world can change and the world will be changed. And we are the instruments through which God enacts that. We are the instruments through which God's love pours into the world, through which God's peace is made known. And the deepest part of it, I think, is just being able to affirm the very truth that we are each beloved by God and we each reflect God, which means when we deny each other, we deny God, and when we accept each other, we accept God. So in this moment of the Nativity, when the Word, life, came among us, to walk among us, to be with us, to reveal that there is no separation between the ordinary and the sacred, may we leave this place changed by that truth. May it guide our words and our actions. May it guide where we seek hope and embody hope. It might not erase the challenges we are in. It may not erase the pains that we experience in this moment, but it is a promise that God is doing a new thing. And then that thing will be brought into fulfillment. And fulfillment through the resurrection, where we see that death will hold over us, that the deepest darkness cannot extinguish the light. But it is through God that that light shines forever. And that is to what we cling to tonight. The Word that lives among us. Amen.